Hi, I'm Susie, and today we're going to be looking at the word prime number. So, what is a prime number? And more importantly, how do we know that a number that we're looking at is a prime number? We're going to start off by looking at the definition of what a prime number is. So, a prime number is a whole number greater than 1 with exactly two factors, 1 and itself. And before I continue on investigating prime numbers, let's go ahead and take a quick review of what a whole number is and what factors are. So whole numbers are numbers without fractions or decimals attached to them. So some examples will include like 0, 1, 2, 50, and 57. But if I took, like, say, the number 1 and I decided to put a fraction next to it of 1/2, now I have a mixed number of 1/2. So 1/2 is not considered a whole number, but the number 1 is. Another example would be, say I took the number 50 and I attached a decimal of 0.26 to it. Well, now I have a decimal number of 50.26. And in order to make that a whole number again, I'd need to get rid of that decimal, and I would end up just with the number 50. So remember, whole numbers are just numbers that do not have fractions or decimals attached to them. Now let's take a look at the word factors. Factors are just numbers that are being multiplied. So for example, if I decide to multiply 5 times 3, 5 and 3 would be considered factors. So now let's go back and review that definition one more time. So a prime number is a whole number, which means it's a number that doesn't have a fraction or a decimal attached to it. So it's a whole number that is greater than 1 with exactly two factors, 1 times itself. So remember, factors are numbers that are multiplied, and prime numbers have only two factors, 1 times itself. Now, before I start getting into and showing you some specific examples of prime numbers, I want to share with you a little strategy that you can use to help yourself identify a prime number. And it involves asking yourself two questions. So the first question you want to ask yourself is the number that I'm looking at, is it a whole number, meaning there's no fractions or decimals attached to it? And is that whole number greater than 1? And does the number that I'm looking at have just and only just two factors, 1 times itself? And if you answer yes to both of those questions, then you know that you're looking at a prime number. So let's practice that strategy. I'm going to look at the number 2, and I'm going to ask myself that first question. Is 2 a whole number greater than 1? Yes, it is. Now let's ask ourselves that second question, and I'm going to think of the factors of 2. How can I take a pair of numbers and multiply them together to get the number 2? Well, I know I can do 1 times 2, but I can't think of any other way, any other set of numbers that's going to give me 2 when I multiply them. So it looks like the number 2 has only two factors, 1 and itself. Let's go ahead and take a look at another one. Let's look at the number 3. All right, let's ask ourselves, is 3 a whole number greater than 1? Yes, it is. Now let's think of those factors of 3. Well, I know I can do 1 times 3, but I can't think of any other way to get a 3, so it looks like 3 has just two factors, 1 and itself. And I answered yes to both of those questions, so I know that the number 3 is a prime number. Let's take a look at another one. Let's look at the number 5. And this time I'm not going to put those questions on the screen. We're just going to kind of practice doing that in our head. So is 5 a whole number greater than 1? Yes, it is. Now I'm going to start thinking of those factors of 5. Well, I know that I can do 5 1 times 5, but I can't think of any other way to get that. So it looks like 5 only has two factors, 1 times itself. So 5 is a prime number. Here are a few more that you can look at. We have 7, 11, and 17. So all of these numbers in our examples, if we were to ask ourselves those two questions, we would answer yes to both of them. Now, before I move on to showing you some non-examples of prime numbers, I just want you to take a look at the list of examples that I gave you. And if you notice, all of the numbers in my examples are all odd numbers except for that number 2. 2 is the only even prime number. So it's a special prime number because it's the only prime number that is even. So if you look at all even numbers other than the number 2, none of those even numbers would be considered prime numbers because 2 would be a factor of them. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some non-examples. And when I look at non-examples, I'm going to ask myself the same 2 questions. But if I get a no as an answer to one of those 2 questions, then I know that that number is not a prime number. So let's look at the number 0. Starting with the first question, is 0 greater than 1? Well, no, it's not. So it's not a prime number. Let's look at another one. Let's look at the number 1. Ask ourselves that first question. Is 1 greater than 1? Well, no, it's not. It's equal to 1, but it's not greater than 1. So 1 is not a prime number. Let's look at another one. Let's look at the number 4. So I start with that first question. Is 4 a whole number greater than 1? Yes, it is. Now let's think of those factors of 4. Well, I know that I can get 4 by doing 1 times 4, but I also know that I can get 4 by doing 2 times 2. So it looks like 4 has just more than 2 factors of 1 in itself, so I'd have to answer no to that question. So that means that 4 is not a prime number. Let's look at another one. This time we're going to look at an odd number, the number 9. And just because it's an odd number does not mean that it's a prime number. So let's ask ourselves those 2 questions. Is 9 a whole number greater than 1? Yes. Now let's think of those factors. Well, I know I can get 9 by doing 1 times 9, but I can also get 9 by doing 3 times 3. So the answer to that second question would be no, because 9 has more than just 2 factors of 1 in itself, and 9 is not a prime number. All right, let's take a look at a couple more. The numbers 21 and 26 are also examples of numbers that are not prime because they have more than 2 factors of besides 1 times themselves. All right, let's do a little bit of practice on your own. And so I'm going to ask you to tell me whether the given number is a prime number, and more importantly, how do you know? So you're going to ask yourself those 2 questions. Is the number that I'm looking at whole number greater than 1? And does the number that I'm looking at have only 2 factors, 1 and itself? So let's try one. The number 13. Pause your video if you need to. If you said that 13 was a prime number, you are correct. And it's a prime number because, yes, it's a whole number greater than 1, and it has only 2 factors, 1 times 13. Let's try another one. The number 15. Pause your video if you need to. The number 15 is not a prime number because, yes, it is greater than 1, but it has more than 2 factors. I can get 15 by doing 1 times 15, but I can also get it by doing 3 times 5. So 15, even though it's an odd number, is not a prime number. Let's take a look at another one. The number 1. The number 1 is not a prime number because it's not greater than 1. All right, one last tricky number, the number 57. Be careful. 57 is not a prime number because while it is greater than 1, it does have more than 2 factors other than 1 times 57. And if I look at that number 57 and I use those divisibility rules that you learned in elementary school, I know that I can add the digits of 57, 5 plus 7 to give me 12. And I know that 3 goes into 12, so I know that 3 is also a factor of 57. So because 57 has more than just 2 factors, I know that 57 is not a prime number. Numbers like 57 look like prime numbers, so you have to be really careful and really look a little bit deeper sometimes so that you don't get tricked. All right, let's wrap this up with a vocabulary review. Do you remember what kinds of numbers are written without fractions or decimals? Yep, you're right. Those would be whole numbers. Whole numbers are written without fractions or decimals. What kinds of numbers are being multiplied? You got it. That would be factors. Factors are numbers that are being multiplied. And let's review the vocabulary definition for prime numbers. Remember, prime numbers are greater than 1 with exactly 2 factors, 1 and itself. So if you like this video, please remember to click that like button at the bottom of your screen. And in order to enable me to make more of these videos, please do click the subscribe along with that notification bell, letting you know when more of my videos get posted. And please feel free to leave any comments. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.